We're here on Christmas Day 2008 in the year of our Lord, and we're sitting with our uncle Don Messenger, and this is yours truly, Richard Messenger, along with director producer John Placentia. Okay, so we're just going to ask some more questions here of Uncle Don, and hopefully you can dig deep and expand on some things, and maybe shed some light on different areas that you might feel led to. So to start out with, and this is kind of in a chronological order, so to speak, at least roughly speaking, what if you could, what would be the one defining moment of your childhood?
Well, I think one thing that has been a part of me all my life is part of my what I like, and is my personality on different things, and that is I like artistic things.
Okay.
And things that are lined up, they're not crooked, or they're symmetrical, things like that. So that's something that has kind of been my makeup ever since I was a kid.
Okay.
And even Madeline mentions about it sometime and kids me about, that doesn't just see me. I'm looking this way, and what are you looking at? Well, that isn't lined up that with that, and
okay,
that's kind of it should be lined up, or
yeah,
to me it isn't right.
I could understand that.
And that has gone with me when I really being older, and I look back to my youth, and I think, yeah, that was there, even though I didn't think about it, I didn't realize it.
Yeah, you weren't necessarily conscious of it.
I wasn't conscious of it, but
yeah,
as I look back, I see, yeah, it was.
Okay.
And in school, in my grammar school, I always did great in art.
Mm-hmm.
I liked art.
Wow.
And I ended up, I took a year of fine arts drawing in Cypress College and made an A in that. And that was like when I was about 47 years old.
Really?
So that was a long span in between.
Wow. So you developed an early appreciation for artistic things.
Yeah, for artistic
and
things.
especially as it related to being linear, symmetrical, geometric.
Yeah, or just even certain artwork that I like more than others, Mm-hmm. And I always enjoyed, like you come over our house, we had lots of different vases and, things like that I have picked up that Madeline didn't pick out.
Mm-hmm.
But
would one particular artist or artisan come to mind? Like Frank Lloyd Wright, or,
well, some of the old artists, I appreciated their work. I can't think of one of them that I saw. Mm-hmm. I went to the Huntington Library, I believe it was, and they had some actual paintings from one of the artists of old. I think they were approximately 400 years old, and I had a lot of respect that they did. The tenacity, their ability to bring out, the realistic things. The photograph was not known in those days, and that's the only way a person could have a likeness of someone, was to pay a person to paint it, and that, of course, was only done by
Yeah.
those that had money because nobody else could afford it. And I was trying to think of the artists that I like. I have seen 2 Rembrandts. That guy was fantastic,
Yeah.
and I appreciated his work. And of course, Michelangelo was one of the greatest in the history. But that's something I've always liked.
Did you pursue your artistic interest?
No, not really. Other than that I took at school, and one other little artistic painting that I did from a fellow who was taking an art course, and we were living together when my first wife and I were separated, and I saw this little picture in his workbook, and I blew it up to about 5 times that size and painted that one evening, and I still have it to this day. And that was, I don't know, it was like 40 years ago.
Do you regret maybe not pursuing artistic endeavors or interests?
In a way I do. I wish I had taken up oil painting, and landscapes interest me a great deal. I appreciated the sandstone formations that in the Grand Canyon, the Canyon de Chelly, and where else was it? Monument Valley, and things like that. I wish I had done that. Yeah, I kind of regret that I never really took time to at least to do some.
Right. Okay.
And I have all the equipment, even now, to do that, but I just never seem to have time.
Yeah. Okay. Throughout your lifetime, you've gone on a lot of vacations and travels, I'm sure. What would be your most memorable vacation or trip, and tell us why?
Well, I think one of the most memorable trips we took was when we went to Page, Arizona, and where they had put in the dam there and backed up the water, and to see the immense sandstones, and to look down in the valley and see that tremendous cut. You look straight down, I think it's like 700 feet, I believe, and where it was cut through there, and I'm sure that this was done during the Great Flood from Noah's time. In other words, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights without stopping. Well, and before that, see, it didn't rain. Before that, the earth was watered by God brought a dew up from the earth, and that's how things were watered, and the grasses and the plants. And so, to me, I look down there and I see that, and I see, and we can reflect back at that time when that happened, and it would take something like that to be able to create that canyon the way it was, and all the canyons, and of course that's high ground, and that flowed towards the ocean.
Is that Parker Dam and Lake Mead you're talking about?
Caused all those to happen. Well, primarily I'm thinking about the gorge there, where they built the dam. I can't think of the name of it right offhand, but it's at Page, Arizona. That's the town
Yeah, I think it
where it is.
is it Parker.
No, Parker's way down
Way
the
down?
Colorado River. Yeah, over in Arizona, southern Arizona, and this is up. Actually, it's part of it is in Utah, and the north end of it is in Arizona. And then the uniqueness of that landscaping that God created there at Canyon de Chelly. It's really 3 canyons, and it kind of looks like a chicken foot shape, you know, with one back here and 3 different branches. And you start out down at one place, and as you go up, well, it gets higher and higher and higher, and you can get up there where you can look down. I think it's 900 feet straight down to the canyon. I mean, it is straight. And then you see, here's a great big column standing up there all by itself, and it's maybe 600 or 700 feet high. It's just, it just says, man, the awesomeness of God to create things like that is just mind-boggling.
What year would this have been, and how old were you?
53, 54, 55, somewhere in there.
Okay. All right. Tell us about some funny or sad or interesting or revealing childhood experiences that were related to growing up with a smaller brother that was 7 years your junior.
Well, I especially remember in Santa Barbara, of course, and when we were in that age bracket. And one thing that used to aggravate me was, I may have mentioned this before, that I'd have some of my friends over playing, and if Richard would get hurt, why, Dad would take it out on me. And that used to really aggravate the fool out of me, because it wasn't anything I did to him, but it was something that he did, but because he was crying, my dad figured I did it, and that happened.
Yeah.
A number of times.
Generally speaking,
Yeah.
did you get along well? Did you quarrel? Did you have a typical brother relationship?
We got along, I think, very well, but being that much age difference, you know, you're bound to have things that happen. I can't think of any specific thing where we had real confrontation, but I do remember I told Mom one day and said, "Richard, there's flies in my soup." And I remember Mother reminded me of that ever so often, so that's probably why I remember it now.
Yeah, why you remember it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't recall just what age I was, but I think I was probably around maybe 12 myself at that time, or 13.
So he would have been 5 or 6, let's say.
He would have been, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Did you actively try to mentor your younger brother?
Yeah, I did. I think I did on different things that came up, you know, helping or telling, things like that. And I think that's. I built model airplanes. I got started when I was 9 years old, and that's one thing I think I transferred over to my brother, so he got right into that. And because I took machine shop in high school and majored in that, why, I believe that's why he did, and it ended up being a real boon to both of us.
Okay.
It was something that gave us a background to which really helped us through our next many years of life.
Did you
Yeah.
play sports together, or board games, or hobbies, and share those sorts of things?
Oh, I think we did on some things where the age difference,
Wasn't as critical?
yeah, wasn't critical.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we didn't, of course. And, I don't know. I never had any animosity or anything like that. No, we never had it. We always got along very well as we grew up. Yeah.
Okay. Moving on, tell us, as you grew older and you joined the military, tell us more details about your experience there. Did you see active duty? How long did you serve? Do you cherish those memories? Do you regret your time in the service? That sort of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I went in the service in December of '43 and left in December of '45 with an honorable discharge and all. And I went into the pilot program, but I never really got very far because they closed the. I was in for a while, and they closed the colleges, yes, or pre-flight school, and they only had 3 in the United States. And because of that, why, it meant everybody that was waiting to go into there would go into the next phase, which was, I guess, college. I can't remember exactly what each one was. And that ended up being kind of a fiasco because we go to school. When we got through that phase of school, then they'd send us to some field, and then you would just pull duty based on what you had done in prior life or school, whatever, and they try to find you something that would work with that, match that.
Okay.
And so I had drafting in high school, so I worked as a post engineers doing drafting, and at one field, and I worked in the Loran unit, which now today has become the GPS system, but that's what they used in those days. And so I pulled different phases of duty like that as we waited for each phase to come up. And I went through the college training, which I think amounted to about like going a semester. At college, I went to what they call branch agricultural, which is a branch of Utah State. And I finished that, and we flew the small Taylorcraft and Arancas and those we had 8 hours of flight time. And that's really all the flight time I ever got in. Yeah. Because I kept waiting for the next phase, and that would have been primary, and I never got there because what happened is they were going to drop the atomic bomb, and we didn't know that, and because of that, that's why we were pulling all this duty instead of going directly into the next phase, one right after the other. And I met other people in the service that I had been at different fields with, and they already were through and commissioned officers, and I was still trying to get through there. So
So were you on active duty at all, or did
No,
you?
I never went
Yeah.
overseas. There's no
Okay.
reason, because I was still waiting for training
Yeah.
to complete the pilot training. After you were in there a while, then we had this some tests that they gave you, and that's when they determined whether you were going to be a bombardier or a navigator or a pilot. And so that's when I was passed for the pilot's education.
So are those good memories, indifferent,
Yes,
bad memories?
They
or-
were good memories, but like I've heard other guys say, and I felt the same way, that I wouldn't give $1,000 for the experience, but I didn't want to go through it again. So I was glad they gave us our choice of signing up for 4 years or taking discharge, and so I took a discharge that time, which, being married, would be the normal, sensible thing to do, I thought.
Oh, you were already married at that time.
Yeah, I was already married at that time.
Okay. How did you and your first wife Nadine meet?
We meet. We really met from church, because our families knew each other from church. And though she was younger, I never had any intention, or any thought, because she was younger than I, about 4.5 years. And I never had any intention of ever dating her.
Okay.
But because our families knew each other, that's how our mothers got talking, and that's how I got the first date with her.
Really? Oh. What did the two of you have in common? What drew you together?
What did we do together? You really, after you date a couple of times, you find out right at the outset that either you get along, or you enjoy doing certain things together. And so that's what really developed the courtship and all, because I like to go skiing, and she did too, and used to go bowling together. She enjoyed that, so did I. So those kind of common things kind of led to the actual getting married.
What made you decide to ask her to be your wife? How did you propose to her? Those are two questions.
I'll have to admit, I really can't remember.
You don't remember
how that came about, to tell you the truth. I don't recall where I gave her first ring, anything like that, With Madeline, I remember that well, but I don't with her.
So, do you remember what it was that made you decide to ask her to marry you? Or was it just a typical natural progression?
Yeah, it's just sort of a natural progression. You enjoy having fun together, and you keep on going. And of course, as I would say to any couple, you really don't analyze things when you're at that young age, and things that you might aggravate you. You don't really give it any serious thought. You always figure it'll work out, and those things, it'll never expand into any problem. But it does and can, and did.
Yeah. How old were you, and how old was Nadine when you were married?
She was 17. I was 21.
Okay. Now you mentioned your families knew each other through
Yeah.
church.
Yeah, from church.
And
they
just for historical purposes, can you kind of run down her family tree and a little bit of history about them to us? I mean, her her siblings, her family, what they did, who they were, that sort of thing?
Well, her dad died when she was about 5. She had a sister 2 years older,
Named?
Josephine, and they were actually born in Texas, and I don't know how old they were when they came to California, but her dad died, and subsequently at some point there, her mother married a man named Theodore.
Named what?
Named Theodore, and her name was Opal, and they got married, and so Opal already had the 2 girls, and he had 1 boy, also called Theodore. And
What was the last name, the surname?
Glenn.
Glenn.
Yeah,
Okay.
Glenn, Glenn. And I don't know where they went, but eventually they ended up in San Bernardino.
And under what circumstances did her father die? Do you remember?
I don't think that I don't think they knew, because I asked her that, and she said she didn't know. I asked her mother, and I don't know. He got sick and died, and so he was very young. Obviously, if she was only 5 years old, and her sister 7, and they never did know, I guess. So they settled here, and eventually went to the same type of church that we went to. They had a church split about that time, and one faction went to my grandmother's house in San Bernardino, and they lived in a very large house there on 10th Street, and it was a big house, and they took care of it, I believe, for the person who owned it, and they didn't pay any rent, but they took care of the place, so vandals wouldn't tear it to pieces, and it was a really, really nice old home. And that's the first time I remember meeting. I had met my uncles once when I was very young, 7 years old, back in Kansas, but this is the first time I met them when we came down to Santa Barbara, and we met them there. And
but that was your uncles on your side, right?
Yeah, my dad's half brothers, and that's the first time I really got acquainted with them, and ended up subsequently a little while later that after sort of in the end of the Depression, about 34, why my dad and Mom moved down to San Bernardino, of course, and set up housekeeping down here, and Dad got the jobs through Chris and Weedham.
But now back to Nadine's family, though.
Yeah.
You said they moved here, that father died, she remarried, and then pick it up from there.
No, he trying to think what he did. He just did odd jobs, I guess, for some time. But after he did moving, and started his own moving business. And then a little later, I guess, and when we were going together, and developed it into a business that he carried and ran until he retired. And
That was Theodore Glenn.
Theodore Glenn, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And,
What was the name of the company? Just
Economy Movers
in San Bernardino?
in San Bernardino, yeah. And he did that. He bought a home on Baseline and put up a warehouse there and had storage there. and then he subsequently turned it over to Josephine and her husband, and when he retired. And at that time, Nadine and I were already married. And let's see, where was I working? San Diego.
What was the son's name? You said she had 2 daughters, but he had a
He
son.
had a son, Theodore, same as his.
Oh, Theodore.
It wasn't, I don't know, Theodore Jr., I guess it was. I never heard him call him Jr. But they called him Teddy, Ted. And it's really a short for Theodore. And let's see, what did Ted went to school here and graduated from high school, and then he met a girl in high school, and they were subsequently married, and he did different jobs around. I don't recall just what he did, but he went to Guam, and she stayed here and worked, and he went to Guam on a overseas job and worked there for, I think, 1 year, and came back, and they started a little coffee shop across the street from the high school, a sandwich shop, and they maintained that for a while, and then he moved to Los Angeles and became a court reporter, and down the line later he went to work for Matson Steamship Line and ended up being over the personnel office for Matson Steamship.
Now this is Ted Jr.
This is Ted Jr.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they didn't have any children of their own, but they did adopt a boy and a girl. And the boy never did know just what he did, but he started out after school working with some band and traveling, got into drugs, and died at a young age from drugs. And that his funeral was about 2 years ago. He died. I don't recall just how old he was.
You mean in 06?
But
In 06? You said 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
In 2006? His funeral?
Yeah, about 2006, right. And his sister lives in Riverside. And I don't know anything about her except she's married and divorced.
Now, tell us just briefly about Josephine's side of the family.
Joseph,
The lineage there.
the lineage. Josephine married a fellow she met who was stationed in San Bernardino. He was in the army, and they got married, and they had 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. And the husband spent 2 years in England in World War II.
Now, what was their names?
Came
The
back.
children?
The children, Teddy was the boy, and his Joanne was the middle girl. Ted was the youngest, Joanne was the middle girl, and the oldest was Carla. And let's see. They grew up, of course, and all got married, and Carla, the eldest, married one of the boys from church that she knew, and let's see, and it ended up that Richard, my brother, married, let's see, married
Yeah, it gets a little
married
confusing.
the sister, right, of the boy that Carla married. And but Carla split. And
Oh, you mean Jim?
Jim
Rooney.
Jim Rooney.
Yeah.
And last I heard, he was a singer in Hawaii. I guess that's the last I've heard of him. And let's see.
And your brother married Jim
Rooney's sister.
Sister, correct.
Sister.
Okay.
So the families knew each other, and things like that happened because of knowing each other.
Okay. Obviously, your marriage to Nadine did not end well. But tell us, in your opinion, what went wrong and what you might have done differently if you had to do it over again.
Well, if I had to, what went wrong was, I think when she was brought up and living in the home there, the two families, her mother and her stepfather, when they get in a hassle way, then she would kind of get on Teddy, and he would get on Nadine, and Josephine was kind of left out, and they didn't never hassle about her.
Josephine was younger?
Josephine's 2 years older than Nadine, but Nadine was the one that he would jump on,
And the mother would jump on the son.
on Teddy, like that. Well, it caused friction over a period of time, and why Josephine wasn't in, I don't know. It always seemed to me like, it appeared to me at the time I was married to her that the mother kind of acted like Josephine was from one parent, and Nadine from another parent. But according to the mother, they were true sisters.
Yeah.
That part I don't know. They didn't look anything alike at all. That still doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
And anyhow, the reason I think she really wanted to get out of the house.
Nadine.
I think Nadine did, and I think that's one of the things that if she got married with the wrong intention, that was like, hey, if we don't get along, we can always get a divorce, which is the wrong reason.
The wrong premise.
And the wrong premise, yeah, to expect the thing to work. And right off from the beginning, she was the type of person who she liked to flirt. She enjoyed compliments and things like that from men, and it got where it just grew and grew. And so, and I didn't realize it just was very stormy weather over quite a period of time, and I wished, and I'd had, before our first child was born, I wished that I had really left at that time, and should have, because it was obvious we were never going to ever get along.
Make the long haul.
Make it on the long term. I knew we never would. And I was thinking too that someday if I get sick, I couldn't count on her to take care of me. And yet I know I would take care of her. So
Right.
it wasn't an even Steven.
Yeah, you weren't on par
We
there.
weren't on par at all.
Yeah. Okay.
In that respect. There were other good things about her. She made a good mother, and she was very bright, and she was a good worker, and very steady on her job and so on. But just she enjoyed flirting and got herself in different affairs, and so we eventually split. But I was,
Could there have been anything you would have done differently that might have helped or changed?
yeah,
Or?
yeah, I could have should have given an ultimatum. Either if you want to be married or
Yeah.
or
Shape
we
up or
just-
ship out.
Yeah, we just shape up or ship out, and that's what I should have done. It would have much better for me and for the children subsequently. And I really should have done it.
So you obviously
And
have regrets about that, you mean?
what's that?
You have regrets about not doing that?
Yes, yes, yeah, big regrets about not doing that. And it ended up once you have children, why? I didn't want to abandon the children, or I could have, split them. But I didn't because I had no idea who was gonna. She obviously would marry somebody subsequently, and I had no idea how they were going to take care of the children, how they would be brought up. And at that time, why the state always awarded the children to the
Right.
mother,
Right.
and I didn't have money really to fight the thing to that extent anyway. But I would have taken the kids and kept them. And so it ended up being a kind of a nasty
Separation
divorce.
and
Yeah,
dissolution.
She was really good about one thing, is she realized early on in the divorce proceedings that the lawyers really, my lawyer was telling me one thing, and she was telling me from her lawyer something else. So I realized that my lawyer wasn't really telling me from what she said her lawyer said, except my lawyer wasn't really telling me the truth. And so we had a tough time with the settlement, except the house, and she realized that the lawyers really were in it for themselves, and so we just settled that we would work that one item out together by ourselves without the lawyers, and whatever agreement we made subsequently, that's what it would be, and that's the way it was written in the divorce papers.
Yeah.
So we split the other things we came to agreement on, and so afterwards, she lived in the house, and I got an apartment, and she stayed there 1 month and said, "I'll get an apartment, you take the house, because I can't keep it up."
Yeah.
And so that was good for me. And our final settlement was, I paid her $5,000 for her portion, her part in it,
Yeah. Her
and
interest.
her part in the house, and also would continue to pay the balance of a loan. I don't know why we had this loan, I don't recall, but we had a loan. The balance was down to about 500, so I took over that and increased the 500 debt to 5,500 and paid that off in our settlement, and it was ended up being a great blessing to me, because the house appreciated 10 times and gave me tax write-off.
Right.
But it was good.
Right. What was the biggest lesson you feel you learned from that experience?
Well, I learned a lot from it, actually. I learned that many things about personalities, actions, and about making decisions and things. And it was just it was an education that, you know, I can't just set right down in details, but it was something you learn and about life, and you just use those things that you learn to help in the future.
Tell us about your early memories of fatherhood, and did you enjoy being a father?
I really enjoyed being a father, yes. I, from the time the kids were little, we had a tough time with Donna. She's prematurely born, and we had to feed her around the clock and still go to work, and that was tough because Nadine was working too. I guess we took off. I don't know just how we did that, but we got through it. Things like that teach you about tenacity and following through with commitment. And then I always enjoyed the kids as we grew up. We had lots of fun together, lots of memories, and we did a lot of things together.
Fun family things,
Fun family
activities,
things, yeah. We went to the beach, and we went to the mountains,
Disneyland, whatever.
and yeah, we had a lot of church activities that we went to. We used to go to the zoo, LA Zoo, often, and we go to the zoo and ride to the miniature trains over there, and we. I used to, as my son got older, I used to take him over to the park, he and one or two other friends, and I'd hit flies to them, and they'd catch the balls out there, and so they got pretty proficient at catching balls, and subsequently Larry joined Little League, and was a big help for him when on the tryouts. Why, he did really great, and they took him on right away. And we had great times both there and many activities at church that we were involved in. And Donna was went 2 times with Youth with a Mission when she was a teenager, and they went to the Virgin Islands and the Bahamas, and that continued until right through up to and very shortly after our divorce. Really, yes, had great respect and love for the kids.
Yeah, I'm sure it's painful for you to share.
And was one of the main reasons why I continued with a marriage until she finally had aligned herself with someone else that she was going to get married to, but I didn't know that at the time. But found it out very quickly once they decided to go ahead and receive the papers, which was the beginning of the start of the divorce action.
Okay. Well, if you had to describe yourself to a total stranger, what would you tell them about who you are?
I cannot plan, but I don't have to take my train off if I can play Elvis.
Well,
But I don't know if I can play Elvis.
I'll tell them that
Now, slow down here.
I'm a man of integrity.
What?
I keep my word.
7.
I'm dependable,
7? Where's the 7?
and will follow through what I've agreed to follow through on or do.
There's another 7?
And
And then
and
But now, if
I
I do the plate, then that goes up.
go out of my way
Yeah,
to help
I was
people.
able to play somewhere, thank goodness.
and do things not just for remuneration, but you know, as a help. And that's kind of been following through as much as I was able to in my lifetime. And I've helped a number of people in little ways, time to time. You know. Like I got my truck, I helped move somebody, you know, don't even ask them for the gasoline money,
Right.
things like that, you know. So I would consider myself, I would say, dependable, a man that works to be a man of integrity.
Okay. What words of wisdom would you like to share about the big lessons of life?
The big lessons of life. Well, the lessons of life, there's, of course, many factions to that. I would say that early planning in life is very important, and you should have goals, and it's a good idea to have signposts along the way with things that you want to have done by the time you get to that particular point, and follow through with that. And things that you want to pursue, that you should make sure that you are being educated for that particular thing, and hang in there with it with tenacity if you want it to come about in life. You don't expect it to just happen to come along just because you're wishing for it. You get what you effort you put out. That's what you'll be rewarded. And of course, I can't get away from the fact that God loves you, and if you'll follow Him, He will help you and He will guide you, without a doubt.
Okay, just a couple more quick questions. What one thing, if you could, would you like to do over again in your life?
Like to do over again. Yeah. Get married to Madeline in the first place.
In the first place, okay.
That would have been great. That would have been a big change in my life.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be great, and I'm sure there are a lot of things along the line that I would change if I had done some of the thinking that I should have and planning that I should have.
Okay.
As you go through life, you need to do some planning and hang in there with it.
Now, if you had,
Any other parting words you want us to remember?
Well, I want people to remember my family, that I really like my family. I was happy with them for the most part. I say there are different things about our personalities that from one person to another we didn't agree upon, but that didn't mean that I didn't love them or care about them. And I even wish that our families had been closer than we were. And also the same about my wife's family, that we had been really closer and more caring. It's one thing that has lacked in people is a real concern for one another, I think, in the family. This in the world today, it's take care of me and don't worry about anybody else is just rampant throughout the land, and shows and causes much trouble. But I wish our families all been closer and not, this and more far-reaching of our families as we get separated and we don't take time to keep in touch and keep track, and when you're retired, you think about that more.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking now like people like Florence. I feel like somehow we really let her down. We could have been a greater help to her. But I think she has some real inward problems and disappointments that's caused her to be in the position she is. And all of my wife's family the same way. We need to be more closer and caring and involved, I think. I don't know. I think we just get so caught up in our daily thing we do that important things get squeezed out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're all guilty of that.
Yeah, we're all involved in that.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't know how long I'll be here, but I'm glad we still get together occasionally, as we do. And that's a blessing.
Well, I think we can all echo those sorts of feelings and sentiments. I mean, we're glad to have you as our uncle, and yeah, sure, I think we could all wish to be closer, and in many ways, not just in close proximity, but closer, in many ways that would help us all.
I wish we could get together sometime here so I could show you some things in the scriptures, a few verses that you should look at and think about and take to heart, because it's a case of life and death, yours.
Right.
And the harder it goes on, longer it goes on, the less likely you are to make a commitment to follow the Lord. I couldn't put my finger, but there's an old, somebody I read somewhere a long time said, if a person hasn't made a commitment to follow the Lord by age 40, his chances of ever doing that are so diminished that it's a very small percentage. I think I couldn't, I don't have any written word anywhere, but somewhere I read that information. I don't know how accurate it was at the time.
Right.
But I always remembered it or something. That was probably 40 years ago.
Okay, well, I think we're probably wrapping up this session, so thank you. Appreciate all your sharing with us.
You're welcome. I'm sorry I can't remember all the details
I think you remember quite a bit.
that I could that I'd like to reiterate. But glad for this time we could get together and and talk and remember some of these things as the family. I'm very sorry that I didn't write down some of the things that my dad told me that I wonder about now. Like I think of my cousin Larry, you know, when I said we know we're related, but neither one of us know how. You know, things like that bother me. You know, I would like to know
Yeah.
where we stand, and with other relatives that I've had, you know, it's kind of like being disjointed. You just, you know, they're hooked up, but you don't know how.
We're actually playing chicken.
All right.
Nice. Nice talking to you people. Love you guys.
Yeah.
Look, I imagine they probably want to get rolling. It's 8:30. Seems like it's about 11.